Hello everyone, welcome to Highly Intelligent. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Second Mycology. You can introduce yourself if you'd like.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Just hanging out here. I love hanging out talking about mushrooms. So, people who don't know what I do, I pretty much just teach people how to grow mushrooms using 90-second rice. It has nothing to do with the length of videos. So, a lot of what I like to teach on my YouTube channel, 90-second Mycology, is all about no pressure cooker techniques. People who want to just test the waters to see if they want to grow mushrooms or not, just to see without expensive setups. A lot of people like to jump into buying tons of stuff right away, and I like to show people you don't always have to do that.
Definitely. So this is actually our second try at recording this. The first time it didn't quite go. I was only sharing my screen and didn't actually record it.
Yeah, and now we figured it out.
Took a little trial and error, but we got it.
Yeah, now you got a good setup.
So let's talk about your early days of cultivation. How did
Oh
you
yeah.
how did you get into growing mushrooms?
So it started when I became a commercial truck driver. I used to smoke a lot of weed like anybody else, but I got my commercial driver's license to drive tractor trailers when I was like 22 years old, and I'm 29 now. And actually, I'll be 30 years old here March 11th. So my birthday's coming up. Today's the 5th. Um, so I got my commercial driver's license. Obviously, I couldn't smoke cannabis anymore. And alcohol just sucks. So I became like an alcoholic because all I could really do was drink and not risk the random drug test. So then I looked into different psychedelics because most companies do not test even federally for psychedelics in your system. And I found, I've been into psychedelics even before I got my commercial driver's license, so I always knew about magic mushrooms and LSD. But then I looked up how complicated could it really be to grow magic mushrooms? Because obviously not everybody can just synthesize LSD in their kitchen. But I started just like everybody else, end up on the shroomery, just simple Google search at the time. I started with the Roger Rabbit mushroom videos, Let's Grow Mushrooms, some PF Tech grows. I've done when it was still like not a big thing to spawn to bulk, you shred up the BRF cakes, spawn it with some cocoa coir, and that's pretty much how I started. I never did anything with the huge fruiting chambers or anything like that because I've always had the mentality to like keep things simple. So I would just do like BRF in vitro right out of the jar with like casing layers and stuff.
Yeah,
And that was enough little that, you don't need to be growing pounds of mushrooms the first time you get into it.
definitely.
So I produced some good fruits doing those classic methods.
So what was the first species that you grew?
It was just general regular cubensis. I believe my first spore vendor was the classic Spore Works too.
I see.
Once you find out, um, the legality of spores and stuff in your area, Spore Works was always a go-to vendor on shroomery. So it was cubensis, and it was actually just recently when I started the 90-second mycology YouTube channel. I think it was like early 2020. I didn't grow that many mushrooms. I didn't, it wasn't something I was into. So definitely more towards like right before the pandemic. For some reason, I just had this weird urge to get back into growing, and it was even before I started the channel. So then I also got into the gourmet species as well, and then it started my whole hobby of mycology up again.
I see.
But it all started with cubensis.
So aside from the Roger Rabbit videos, what information was around when you started, if any at all?
Yeah, so I started, it was only like 2015, like 2014, 2015 when I really started to research it. And I believe there were still some YouTube videos, and it was all the basic pressure cooking grains, soaking grains. I think some of those videos are still around. I don't even remember some of their names. But they're very old. It's right around the time of Roger Rabbit. So like we had the Let's Grow Mushrooms video series. I actually bought that series, and it was even after the DVD releases were out. I guess the DVD releases are very rare,
I
but
see.
it's all digital. So like 2014, 2015, there were some YouTube videos, but not like there is now. There's a bunch of us creators now that are helping people out.
Definitely. When did you discover Uncle Ben's tech?
Yeah, I discovered Uncle Ben's just when I started the channel. So I discovered it. It was I was brought to it on Reddit from Shroomery, and I did a live stream on my channel about the history of indoor magic mushroom cultivation. And there were some old Shroomery threads about it. And when I did this live stream, I can only go back and find one, but it was from like 2005, and that wasn't the one that influenced me. So then it popped up on Reddit, and somebody posted like a colonized Uncle Ben cake and said, "Look, guys, it works." And then Shroom Scout was the one who started the Uncle Ben subreddit. So then it really got me into it, and I played around with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And once I saw, like, this is really all you needed, and all the supplies are literally, besides the spores, there's like almost at your local grocery store. So after I played around with it, I was looking at the bag, and I saw the little microwave icon with the 90 on it, and I went, that's it, 90 Second Mycology. And it was just, it went from there with Uncle Ben's. And still to this day, I still run Uncle Ben's, obviously, not just for content, but sometimes it works great just to test your syringes because they're only like $1 something per bag. Sometimes you don't feel like cooking up a bunch of agar. You
Definitely.
just scoop out some 90-second rice and put them in a ketchup cup in a still air box,
So,
and you're good to go.
how long ago did you make your channel?
I believe it was 2020, maybe January of 2020.
I see. So you've been recently in the community. You've grown quite a bit since you started.
Yes, so um, I'm very thankful to Reddit for that. Like Shroom Scout, who started the Uncle Ben subreddit, I was always in there posting stuff, like helping people out, and Shroom Scout took notice of that, and he let me moderate. So then he also let me kind of integrate my videos, and they got views, and it became like people's go-to place for visual guides of Uncle Ben content. So it was really through Reddit.
Yeah.
I'm looking here. Yeah, January 31st, 2020 is when my channel started.
Wow. Why'd you make your channel? I mean, you were growing some mushrooms out of some rice bags. What made you decide to share it with the world?
I think it was definitely that if you don't grow mushrooms, there's always that stigma that, oh, they need to grow on cow poop out in the cow pasture
Yeah,
on dung
definitely.
patties, or people think mushrooms are hard to grow in general, and I'm like, once you really break it down like this, anybody can grow mushrooms, and a lot of people kind of need them or want to try them to kind of self-medicate, try it out, microdosing, or even just try them out in general and see how they can help you even in a macro dose.
Yeah.
So the big thing I wanted to do was just show people it's not that hard. It's very easy. I do like breaking things down for people and teaching stuff to people in a more simple way, to where they're not always freaking out and overcomplicating things and overthinking things. You just take a step back, and it's fun to teach and help people understand how easy something can really be.
Yeah. So, when you were starting out, how successful was it at first? Like, you had those,
Oh,
first few
yeah.
videos out.
Yeah, so when I first did it, I always went with the cut corner. Like, I have very early videos when we were all talking about, Capri Sun technique. When I first started, it was just classic cut the corner and you squirt on top, and that's your gas exchange as well. Then we started playing with the Capri Sun technique, which was just like inoculating it with the needle like it's a Capri Sun juice pouch.
Yeah.
And then we're like, do we really need to add gas exchange? And then I kind of proved that in my early videos, like you're always going to need gas exchange. So even before that, though, we were so used to squirting like 1 to 2 cc's in a jar of grain, And if you try to do that with a 90-second rice bag, that's immediately too much moisture in there, and it's not going to take off. So that was the number one mistake with all the wet rot, was squirting way too much in there until we all finally got it dialed in. When in anything, in reality, you really only need a drop of spores or a drop of liquid culture to get going, but obviously a little more helps to speed it up. But with the 90-second rice bags, the more patient you are, the less liquid you use, the better off you are.
Definitely. So, do you feel like you made a difference in the community?
Sometimes I sit back and I think, this is just a hobby for me. And then when I go and check on my comments and messages, and it's full of positive, I mean, it's a mixture, positive and negative, mostly positive, of people just like, you don't know what you've done for me. Even if it was just simply keeping me entertained during quarantine, or you helped save my life, like I was on the verge, and your videos alone, I love just putting you on in the background and listening to you and having fun and inoculating my own rice bags. And it's like, it's crazy to think that me, alone in my apartment with my dog and cat, is actually out there in the universe helping people
Yeah,
when I'm just here.
that's
So
that's
kind of like leaving
crazy.
a legacy on the internet.
Definitely. So, when you were looking to grow, when you were starting out, who was like came to you and told you what you needed to do to grow them?
Nobody, it wasn't, I was one of those people that kind of always lurked in the background.
I see.
So like, I was always on Shroomery. I was even on the Grass City forums when I was still smoking cannabis. And a
Yeah,
lot of people led me over to Shroomery. And like, Shroomery has these journals and stuff. Like, users post journals of their own experiences. And it was kind of like, I'm one of those people where I enjoy just being in the background
yeah,
before I decided to make a channel. And at the time you're kind of growing something illegal, so it was like,
definitely.
yeah, I don't really want to make a presence or anything. So I think I had an account, but I never made any of my own posts. I just kind of went with my own self-diagnosis of what could fail or what I did wrong or what I can do.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of took that knowledge with me over the years, and then decided, it's time to just make a channel.
So, how much did Reddit help you along your journey?
Reddit still helps me to this day because people are so creative on there. I believe fruiting directly from the 90-second rice bag was something that popped up on Reddit. Someone just had the idea, let's put the casing layer of cocoa coir on there, and they had beautiful fruits. And it was like, why didn't we just do this from the beginning? Why are we spawning to a bulk substrate?
Yeah,
So anything, like, people are so creative. You'll see crazy posts in the Uncle Ben subreddit where it's just like, people are coming up with crazy stuff. But someone like inoculated a banana the other day,
I
and
saw
they
that.
said,
That was really interesting.
it's like, if this works, like, I
Yeah,
doubt it would, but who knows? It's just, you never know what you're gonna see, and not even just the Uncle Ben subreddit, but there's tons of mushroom subreddits on Reddit where you can see all sorts of different, like, foraging stuff people find. Always learning stuff on Reddit.
definitely. So, I've noticed that a lot of people on Reddit seem to think different. There's pros to Reddit, but there's also cons. Do you think that's correct?
Yeah, I agree with that. You have people that will stay away from, like, the Uncle Ben subreddit because everyone's gonna hate on the Uncle Ben technique. Everybody believes, oh, you got to go get a pressure cooker right away, and you got to do this and that. But Reddit can also, if you don't know what you're kind of reading, or if you're still brand new to something and you're seeing something like, for example, let's say you see a full canopy of mushrooms and you go, oh, I'm going to do that right now. You go through all the steps and you only end up with like two little mushrooms. Sometimes that can discourage people. They think they did something wrong when they didn't. They just didn't know the full process of what goes into it, mushroom genetics and stuff. And I feel like Reddit can leave some negative impacts on people, especially with people commenting like, oh, your growth sucks, what the hell is that? Or I saw a thread the other day where somebody posted a picture of their tub, and it was severely dried out and yellow, and somebody their thread was a question, and then somebody just commented and said, like, is that a real question? Like, to be a dick, like, you
Dang.
should just throw that away or
I've seen a
something.
lot
It's
of
like,
uh
just
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's always like a positive and a negative everywhere, especially on Reddit.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of threads about people commenting or like asking if their stuff's contaminated, and then a bunch of people in the comments tell them it is, and they end up throwing out their whole grow because they thought it was and it really wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, stuff like that too. It's like maybe they were genuinely trying, maybe genuinely they thought it was contaminated, but you never know. You
Yeah,
can always get mixed opinions.
definitely.
Sometimes it's better to just keep to yourself until you have your own experience.
So, for a lot of people out there, it might be common knowledge to most, or to us, but to most people, they don't even know how a mushroom grows. Would you mind explaining?
Yeah, so the life cycle of a mushroom is always going to start with its spores. And spores are microscopic, so when you buy a spore syringe, if it looks clear, that doesn't mean it's bad. Spores are microscopic, which means you really cannot see them with the naked eye. If you get a spore syringe and you see clumps in it, that's like thousands of spores clumped together. So the life cycle of a mushroom starts there with the spores, and those spores need to germinate into mycelium. Single spores can germinate, and in order to actually produce fruiting bodies, you need two compatible spores to grow and meet together, because if you only have one spore, it doesn't have the ability to fruit. So two mushroom spores need to join together, meet, and grow into mycelium. And that mycelium grows throughout a substrate, and that can be like grains or soil. So the indoor mushroom cultivation process is we take that mycelium and we inoculate sterile grains, and then those colonized grains with the mushroom mycelium actually acts as like mushroom seeds. So that's where people can get confused. They're like, oh, I thought spores would be like seeds, but spores are not like seeds. Spores are microscopic, the life cycle of the mushroom. Once we get the colonized grain, we have to use that grain to then spread throughout a substrate, which then could be thought of as the soil. So we're taking these mushroom seeds and putting them throughout the soil, which also provides extra nutrition and moisture. And then once that colonizes, you actually introduce the fruiting conditions, which is just some moisture and fresh air, and you get your mushroom fruiting bodies. Because when you think about it, the best time to go look for mushrooms outside is like right after a nice cold rainfall, nice fresh air, nice cooler air right after the rainfall. And a lot of people wonder, well, why do we need the grains? Because mushrooms outdoors are not being inoculated with grains. And it's just because when you're trying to bring mushrooms to fruit, like indoors, or even like outdoor beds, those grains help act as like little nutrient and water reservoirs to just increase your overall yield and grow. Of course, mushrooms are going to be able to survive outdoors, and people have inoculated liquid culture. It usually always fails. I mean, people have always inoculated substrates directly with liquid culture or spores without grains, but sometimes it'll take a long time. The substrate can quickly run out of moisture. Your yields might be very terrible. You might not even fruit at all. So those little pieces of grain that are colonized with mushroom mycelium kind of act as like anchors. So it can be thought of as kind of similar to growing plants, but fungi are like their own little thing. So I have flowcharts on my website for people who are brand new, and whatever I just said doesn't make any sense at all. I have flowcharts on my website. If you go to 90secondmycology.com/flowcharts, I've got a nice PDF file there for you where it's nice and visual. I also have a companion video that's linked there as well, so it can help you kind of visually understand the life cycle of a mushroom.
Solid. So, What was your most successful grow?
A lot of my most successful grows are usually my gourmet grows because cubensis is pretty resilient. So like when you end up with a full shoebox, it's kind of whatever because you can't really eat all of that. But when I end up with these gourmet grows like pink oysters and chestnuts and pinos, it's so much food that I have to last me for like a couple weeks. So I think those are always my most successful grows where I just grew food that could last me for a couple weeks. And obviously, I eat more with a meal than just mushrooms, but like mushrooms can be a main course when you've got a ton of them.
Definitely. So, do you consider yourself a master cultivator?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's a master. There's always more stuff to learn and experiment with. A lot of people can call themselves masters, and they're the ones that are out there charging tons of money for, one-on-one consultations and trying to make a quick buck and charging people just to answer a question. And it's like all of the knowledge is free out there, and anybody can become a master cultivator. But I don't think anybody actually is because the world of mushrooms, there's just so much to learn and experiment with. You can definitely get your technique down for sure. So many people can consider themselves a master, but I'm pretty humble, and I know that I could do a lot better.
Definitely. What kinds of mushrooms have you grown?
I've grown a lot of gourmet, so I already mentioned like pink oysters, the chestnuts, piopinos, lion's mane, um, cubensis, obviously. Penis envies are always fun to grow. Um, there's one I want to do soon. I found, so I'm in Florida. It's not a secret, obviously.
Hmm.
One day after a rainstorm, I found these little mushrooms popping up the caps looked like donuts. I looked it up. I think I narrowed it down. They're called like fringed sawgill mushrooms, and they're pretty common in Florida. I guess they're a cousin to shiitake, so I definitely want to make a video soon of like domesticating those. I never took tissue samples, but I did get spore prints. So remember, I mentioned earlier that's the beginning of mushroom's life cycle is the spores. So if you find a nice species out in the wild and you have correctly identified it, always grab a spore print, and you can start to cultivate that on your own indoors. So I want to add that to the list. Um, Another one I haven't grown yet, though, is like yellow oysters. Those look cool. I haven't grown the common button mushrooms you find in the grocery stores because they require like a special compost.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've grown the basic circle that everybody usually has around.
So, what would you tell someone who doesn't know where to start?
I think if you don't know where to start, the first thing to do is what we just talked about. Learn about the life cycle of a mushroom. It's very simple.
Yeah.
And from there, you'll be able to kind of gather your own resources. I kind of designed my website for that as well. For people who just don't know where to start, you go to my website, 92ndmycology.com, go to my About page, kind of like a little introduction, and then from there I have a mushroom links and resources page where I've got links to tons of vendors and supplies, on top of the flow charts as well I mentioned. Everything on my website can help you get started, and then it'll also lead you to my YouTube channel for visual guides. So on top of that, though, it's not even just about me. You can simply just always go right to Google, shroomery.org. The forums do have some beginner guides as well. If you don't know if you really want to get into mushroom growing, that's kind of where I fall into play, because I'm not running expensive setups and I'm not telling people to go out there and get pressure cookers and stuff. Some people have done that in the past and they realize, I'm not really into this hobby. I spent all this money, now what? So if you are a diehard, you want to grow mushrooms, probably go to the Shroomery for sure and read about everything you should have right off the bat, pressure canners and jars, sterile grains, start finding grain suppliers around you and stuff.
Yeah. So, what are some basic rule of thumb cultivation techniques? Like, just simple stuff that you go by.
Oh yeah. So the first technique, it's pretty much my slogan, is that common sense will almost always prevail, especially in mushroom cultivation. One rule of thumb is that as soon as you see contamination, don't try to save it. Don't try to, unless you know that you're just trying to experiment. If it's green, that's it. You've got to get rid of it. There's no sense in trying to save it because it spreads like wildfire. Another rule of thumb is you really, when you're preparing your grain spawn, a lot of people do the rapid boils, and that kind of leads to more burst grains. A good rule of thumb is to always just let your grains soak 12 to 24 hours. That's really the right way to do it. Doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's millet, sometimes millet and birdseed only needs a soak. You don't even have to run it through a boil, but
I
it kind of
see.
helps steam it off.
So, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, I think in 5 years, I definitely am still going to be on YouTube, hopefully,
Yeah.
with all the stuff they have going on. They're always striking our videos, all the mushroom creators. In 5 years, I definitely want to hopefully be in a house where I can start producing a lot more outdoor content. A lot of people who donate, they leave me a message. They want more outdoor content, and it's like when I live in an apartment, it's not feasible right now.
Yeah.
So in 5 years, definitely want more 90-second rice content out there. Definitely want more outdoor content, and I kind of want to get my own gourmet culture strains out there on the market with the 90 branding on them. Maybe like a 90 Pio Pino. It's one of my favorites because if you don't know, Pio Pinos look just like cubensis mushrooms, but they're
Yeah.
not. So definitely want to get some of my own signature gourmet strains out there, and then maybe within 5 years there might be some more decriminalization of psychedelic mushrooms, and then maybe you can get some of those on the market.
Yeah.
So it would just be cool. Maybe even have some more products, some 90 Second Mycology products out there, supplies and stuff.
Definitely. So, do you think you could potentially make a living out of growing mushrooms?
Yeah, it'd be a big leap because I've got the 90 branding for sure as a teacher on the internet.
Yeah.
But with the knowledge of just growing mushrooms, I could take that even off of YouTube, even locally like anybody else, and either start a supply shop or even just supplying mushrooms themselves at farmers markets and stuff. If I was struggling with a full-time job or something, I could definitely leap in full-time and make a living off of mushrooms. But what I do right now as a local truck driver, that's pretty much my full-time work, and it's the income I make from that, and I'm home every night, kind of like a regular job. It would take a lot to get to that point with the same amount of work by
Yeah.
myself with mushroom stuff. So definitely, if I had to, I could make it work.
So, any upcoming projects you want to share?
Yeah, so I just talked about the one domesticating that wild mushroom species I found. Want to get some indoor grows going. Maybe even get some of that liquid culture out there for people to grow those. Definitely going to have some more 90-second rice content out there because I kind of strayed away from that at the end of 2021. I was doing weird stuff like the pasta technique and unicorn bag videos.
Yeah.
So people are kind of losing sight of, they think that it's about 90-second videos, but definitely going to have more 90-second rice content. Some of it's a secret. I bet you there's going to be stuff I come out with that people are like, oh, I didn't even think of doing that with 90-second rice. So
Yeah.
definitely going to be fun to kind of come out with some of this stuff and get creative with it and show people that there's more to 90-second rice than just squirting spores in there
Yeah.
and hoping for the best.
So, do you think mushrooms can change the world?
I think definitely in all senses and with all species, because not only do we have the mental therapeutic medicine with like psilocybin and magic mushrooms, but there's probably a lot more general medicinal properties of stuff like reishi and lion's mane, and maybe even some other species and strains that we haven't really found yet that could have crazy antioxidants and stuff.
Yeah.
And to the point to where it could change the world medicinally, mentally, and physically overall. And just even just if it's bringing people together, like at the time we're recording this right now, the stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine, you know, people just lose sight that we are just floating on a rock in space. Why are we so concerned about materialistic stuff?
Exactly.
People need to learn to just let go and love each other. It sounds cliche for sure, all hippy dippy mushroom speak, but
it's
if
true.
we all live that way,
Yeah,
everybody would be a lot more happier.
definitely. So, what's your message to anyone listening?
Yeah, my main message is, if you are for sure determined and you feel like the mushrooms are calling you and you're just struggling, just don't give up. It does get easier. I've had people tell me like they thought my videos were fake, like, oh, you have a bunch of cuts in it, you know, you're doing jump cuts, you replace this and that. No, what you see on my channel is what you get, and it really is that easy when you see how I break it down for you. So just never give up, and as I mentioned earlier, common sense is almost always going to prevail. So if you feel like something isn't right, it most likely may not be right, and vice versa too. If it's feeling right, it might be right.
Yeah. Well, would you like to plug yourself one last time before we get out of here?
Oh yeah, for sure. So if you haven't seen my videos, I'm on YouTube, 90 Second Mycology. And then I'm on Instagram as well, 90 Second Mycology. And I've got my website, which has a lot of resources on it for you. So if you're ever looking for reputable spore vendors, agar vendors, you want some sterile grains, liquid culture vendors, all on my website, 90secondmycology.com. If you go to /links, that's where all the vendors are, along with a ton of other resources. I've got my Uncle Ben supply list there on the resource page. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm not on Twitter or TikTok yet. Everybody wants me to get on TikTok and make actual 90-second long videos. So maybe one day I'll be there as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully we spread this message. People can hear this, and if they've never grown mushrooms but they want to start, or even if they think mushrooms are gross, maybe this can persuade them.
Definitely.
See how easy it really is.
Well, you have a good night, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. It was cool talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Highly Intelligent. I'll see y'all next episode.